Hello, everybody. This is CJ318, and we are team number 5. This is our analysis. So for our analysis, we're wishing to look at a discourse analytical perspective of an interview featuring the late night host Jay Leno, guests Sofia, Vergara, and chef Gordan Ramsey. The interview is taking place in 2010, again on The Tonight Show. This interview was controversial because Gordan Ramsey and Jay Leno were commenting on Sofia's attitude and overall appearance, and it turned very sexual, and it was an inappropriate kind of dynamic. So we will certainly get into that. So first off, we have the rhetorical lens, and what I wish to focus on in terms of the rhetorical lens is kind of rhetorical questioning in a way, such as who's the audience, what's the intended goal of this interaction, why are they all there, why are the celebrities there, why is the audience there, what's the intended goal, and lastly, I wish to focus on the turning point within this conversation in terms of what exactly, where did things start to begin to become sexual, such as the men started sexualizing her, things like that. So when exactly was that moment of persuasion that features that? So right away, as far as the audience goes, we obviously have 3 celebrities. We have Gordan Ramsey, known as best through Hell's Kitchen, things like that on the Food Network. We have Sofia, and we have Jay Leno. And so moving forward, where exactly does this begin to change in terms of this? So right away, you immediately see her walk in, and the 2 men are supposed to be sitting there recognizing her accomplishments in terms of Emmy nomination, but it soon turns on her because they start to sexualize her in a way. So when she walks in, you can see the dynamic change. And again, you're going to have it naturally occur, being 2 men and an actress come in. But I believe the dynamic began to change when Jay Leno holds up a sign that said, after acknowledging her Emmy nomination, he says, Sofia will be known to run down Sunset Boulevard naked. And that was kind of, to me, when things started to turn into the sexualizing aspect of things. So again, we're going to get into some deeper details in terms of what she said, what Gordan Ramsey said, but this is kind of a shell of that rhetorical lens in terms of the evolving dynamic, in terms of who the audience is, fans of Jay Leno, fans of Sofia. It could be a combination of each of those. But want to move on to the next slide here.
Oh no, I lost my thing. Hi, I'm Cindy. My portion of this analysis will be solely seeing this interview through a cultural lens. As a Chicana, watching this interview was horrifying. Watching a fellow female and Latina being degraded and mocked publicly was infuriating. The interview contains 3 people who are all from different countries and cultures. Since I'm a Chicana, it's easy for me to see through my cultural lens and relate to Vergara here. The Everyday Talk text says that a cultural perspective on everyday talk is to foreground the fact that groups of people speak and interpret the actions of those around them in patterned ways. This means that to see something through a cultural lens is to acknowledge that people groups have similarities in how they talk and how they expect others to act. This interview contains several instances where the 2 white men do not realize the cultural lens that covers their eyes. For instance, early on in the interview, Sofia is mocked by Gordan for a picture of her eating pizza with her hands and not with a fork and knife. In Central and South America, it is very common to eat with your hands and not use utensils. In India, people use flatbread to pick up their food. Latinos sometimes use a tortilla to pick up their food. Gordan is taking the opportunity to mock her for not eating the way that his culture tells him is correct. Another instance where Vergara's culture is ridiculed is when she brings a Colombian dessert for Leno to try. This dessert is not meaningless to Vergara because she's Colombian, so this is from her homeland. She is explaining that the dessert pairs well with cookies, but Jay immediately mocks her English and says cookies. Despite Jay's inability to speak multiple languages, he mocks her for having an accent that announces her culture. To make things worse, Gordan tries the dessert and says it tastes like shit. Sofia is offended by this, and I'm not sure there is a culture that would find this acceptable. To add insult to injury, Gordan proceeds to spit it out behind the couch. In Spanish, she says to the crowd that he has no respect. From a cultural lens, it's unspeakably offensive for someone to spit out a gift of food, and not just a gift of food, but one that is treasured by the giver. I'm not sure if Gordan's attacks are racially and culturally motivated, or if he's attempting to assert his dominance over her as a female. When you think about viewing a situation through a cultural lens, you can't just analyze things like nationality or linguistic differences. You also have to consider how cultures view things like gender. Gordan is from a country that dominated and colonized much of the world. Colonizers have a track record of heinous behaviors towards women in particular. I'm not saying that Gordan is a 19th century colonizer, but those that raised him are descendants of colonizers. Considering the European background and cultural lens of these men does not excuse what they did, but allows us to understand where it comes from. The offensiveness of these men becomes deeper the more we look at the many facets that make up the view of cultural lens.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa. And so the ideological lens or a language ideology is how the role of language shapes the cultural and societal settings. And it encompasses the conceptions that we have about language and speakers. And so this definition may include communication differences among foreign languages from around the world, but it also speaks to the communication between genders. And so during this interview, Vergara claims that she didn't scream in real life, referencing a scene in a television show, The Modern Family, which she starred in. And Ramsey followed up with a comment, except in the bedroom. In the video, Vergara looks shocked and the audience is stunned as well. Such comments were deemed inappropriate because Ramsey was objectifying Vergara. And it also creates stereotypes about a woman's sexual habits. The intimate moments that Vergara experiences should be private. However, when Ramsey made that comment, it violated her privacy and her rights to what she does with her body. According to many experts, many men make such comments in order to wield their power over women. When respected names like Ramsey make those comments, it goes unchecked because he's famous and a well-respected person. He finds it inappropriate to verbally convey control over her body. And as linguistic professor Deborah Tannen explained in an interview with Leslie Stahl, women are held to a different standard than men. They are not pictured to be strong leaders and they are all expected to be quiet and reserved. And this is the image that many women are forced to maintain. This exhibits how society encourages women to be inferior to men, and due to the woman's inferior nature, men find it all right to be making these inappropriate comments about a woman's body. And these powerful men deem women to be inferior to men, so no matter what they say or what they do, there may be little repercussions that follow. And the consequences follow these horrendous actions because society has generally accepted that men are allowed to make comments about women. As another example, when Vergara mentioned the word cookie in the dessert conversation, Jay Leno mocked her accent by emphasizing the way she rolled out the letter O in the word cookie. And so Leno's comments exhibit the lack of acceptance and the appreciation for other people's language and cultures. To people in America, foreign languages are picked up to be mocked and belittled. But accents represent the diversity that America has been built upon. And so by mocking her accent, it implied that there is a correct way of saying cookie and that she cannot speak English properly, but rather there is no correct way. And the way she talks stems from a cultural difference. As it is discussed in the article Chicano English, many kids who knew Chicano English, non-standard English with an accent, were deemed illiterate in English and forced to take tests for limited English speakers, even though they were only able to speak English. And in America, even though it is not our official language, there's always an unspoken rule that people who live here are required to know English. And even if they do learn it, it is found to be unusual to speak with an accent, even though it is still speaking English. America is yet to accept that speaking English with an accent does not mean that the person does not know how to speak the language, but is merely a different way of speaking it. Ultimately, the same message will always get across to the audience.
Hello, I'm Lexi. and I did gender discourse. So gender discourse is the communication between two or more genders. The gender discourse in this interview has three main themes associated with it. The first one is overtly sexualizing Sofia Vergara. The second is the lack of respect towards her career. And the last three are the misogyny, sexism, and uncomfortable body language presented by Vergara. The interview starts off inappropriately when Sofia Vergara states how she never screams like that in real life. When the audience did not hear her scream at all, Ramsey made a comment saying only in the bedroom, which is completely uncalled for and overtly sexualizing Vergara. Immediately, you can tell Vergara is uncomfortable because she has negative expression as well as closed body orientation as she looks away from Ramsey. Jay Leno congratulates Vergara for her Emmy nomination and states how Variety said, if Modern Family, the show Sofia was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, wins Emmy for Outstanding Comedy, Sofia Vergara has to run down Sunset Boulevard naked. She again proceeds with negative emotion, but makes light of the inappropriate discourse by demonstrating how she can only speed walk. Leno sexualizes Vergara further by stating, I hope you do it and not some other cast member, insinuating he wants to see Vergara run naked. Vergara tries to get the attention away from her body by stating how the other cast members, Ed O'Neill, is ready to do it. Leno and Ramsey are disrespectful of Vergara's career because this is the extent of the conversation about her career. Leno asks Sofia about her vacation, and she states how she sent in some pictures. The first picture is Sofia in a bikini, and the second is her eating pizza. When it moves to the second picture, Leno demands for them to leave it on the first picture. Leno also mentions how he has a female director, insinuating if it were a male director, he would have not switched the picture so quickly. This is Leno being completely inappropriate and misogynistic because his comments make it seem like a woman can't do a director's job correctly while he is simultaneously sexualizing Vergara's body. Ramsey mentions how Sofia has the whole wedge of pizza in her mouth and in the second picture, which is disrespectful. I also thought he was making inappropriate sexual innuendos, and she also seems to be feeling increasingly uncomfortable. Leno proceeds to ask her how much weight she's gained on her vacation. When Vergara responds with, what kind of question is that? It is Kerman courtesy not to ask questions about weight, as this has no importance for the interview. It is very misogynistic and sexist because they torment Vergara for enjoying her time on vacation. Leno proceeds to mention 2 pounds or 10 pounds. She responds by saying how she is not going to tell them. She states how no one is perfect, and Leno responds with, we're about as close as you can get. This is extremely sexist because he is making it known that him and Ramsey, who are both males, are close to perfect, who Vergara is female. Ramsey also shows disrespectful behavior when he slaps Sofia on the side of her thigh. At this point, you can tell how infuriated she has become, and she slaps him saying, no touching. The last thing they talk about is her dessert she brought and how it is a Colombian delicacy. Leno sarcastically states what a fantastic cook you are when it is clearly store-bought. The entire interview lacks a goal other than making Vergara feel uncomfortable and less than in her own interview.
Hi, I'm Micah, and I have the interaction structures. So the turn taking in this interview started, it started out smooth in the beginning, but towards the end of the interview, Jay Leno and Gordan Ramsey started to talk over Sofia Vergara a lot, and they would make fun of the way that she would say cookies, and they would mock her accent, and she would get cut off a lot. And there was one moment in the interview that was kind of a noticeable silence that came up. There was a part of the interview where Jay Leno was asking about her weight and how much weight she gained on her vacation. And she was kind of trying to stay silent about it, you know, and eventually Jay Leno had to steer the conversation away because she just wasn't trying to answer that question, and they're being rude and disrespectful about it. And they eventually had to move on from it. The conversation floor, Jay Leno was holding the conversation floor while Gordan Ramsey was trying to destabilize Sofia Vergara's role in conversation. He would make distasteful remarks about her culture and about the food that she brought. And yeah, this conversation, they took it in a different direction, and it would turn into Jay Leno and Gordon Ramsay asking a lot of questions and mocking the way Sofia said things and did things.
Hi everyone, I'm Regina, and I'm going to be analyzing the conversational style for this video. So conversational style is the way that we share information with others through language. Direct communication happens when a speaker's true intentions are communicated in his or her verbal messages. It expresses the speaker's needs and desires explicitly. When a direct communicator wants or needs something, they simply come out right away and say what's on their mind. Direct communicators take the other speaker's words as they are, and they tend not to analyze the message for an underlying meaning. They value the effectiveness of short, direct answers and expect honesty. Indirect communication happens when a speaker's true intentions are hidden. Indirect speakers will not make a direct statement or directly answer a question that may cause tension or result in an uncomfortable situation. They're more likely to say words such as maybe or possibly when the answer truly is no. Indirect communicators believe that being polite is more important than giving their true response. And this relates to the concept of saving face. This is to avoid hurting another person's feelings or self-esteem. So with direct communication, there's less risk of misunderstanding, but more risk of surprising or offending the receiver. With indirect communication, there's more risk of misunderstanding, but less risk of offending the receiver. So in this video, you see the use of direct communication right off the bat as Jay Leno comments when Sofia walks in by saying, "Finally, an attractive guest," followed by Gordon Ramsay's response to her after saying, "I'm sorry, I never screamed like that in real life," in reference to a scene from her show on Modern Family. And he responds, "Only in the bedroom?" This is an example of his true intentions being communicated through his verbal message. And this is his way of objectifying Sofia, and he made that very clear. When they're looking at the pictures from her vacation and they move on from the picture of her in the bikini, Jay Leno shouts, "Go back to the other picture," in which he is very expressive and is communicating what he desires, which is direct communication. Most of the direct communication comes from Jay Leno and Gordon Ramsay in this video. You can see a lot of indirect communicational styles coming from Sofia, however, when Gordon Ramsay commented that she had a whole wedge of pizza in her mouth. You can see her become extremely uncomfortable, and her response was, "I have what? You don't eat pizza with a knife and a fork." I imagine that because she was in a live interview, she was trying her best to remain professional. So during the interview, we see a lot of indirect communicational style coming from most of her responses, which is her way of being polite and avoiding creating an uncomfortable situation for herself. And so to conclude, when you consider the European background and cultural lens of these men, it does not excuse what they did, but allows us to better understand where it comes from. The rhetorical lens allows us to recognize that the art of persuasion is alive and well. Even if the targeted audience is predicted, one can never truly expect an evolving dynamic. The language ideology plays an important role in the cultural diversity, but it has been used to mock other races and gender and introduce social outcasts. The gender discourse of the entire interview lacks a goal other than making Vergara feel uncomfortable and less than in her own interview. The conversational style is the way that we share information with others through language. And the interaction structure of this entire interview was degrading and demeaning to Sofia Vergara. Thank you.